listening to the podcast Advertising Playbook, your resource to better understand and execute successful podcast ad campaigns. Hello and welcome to the podcast Advertising Playbook. I'm your host, Heather Osgood. I am joined today by a very special guest. We have Kirk Martin. He is the host of the Calm Parenting podcast. Kirk, welcome to the show.
Heather, I am super excited to be here.
So, Kirk, you and I have been working together at True Native Media, and just full transparency, we are super pleased to be able to represent your show at True Native Media. But I want to kind of start by just finding out what caused you to start the podcast. What was kind of the catalyst for all of it?
The initial catalyst was our son, right? Like coming out of the womb with boxing gloves on, a really strong-willed kid, which led to my transformation as a dad, which led to us working with really strong-willed kids, kids on the spectrum. We invited them into our home. We traveled across the country. But then, Heather, I think it was like 2012, there was a thing called Blog Talk Radio. Like it wasn't,
Yes,
do you remember that?
I do.
And there was no like real podcasting. It was a weird thing. So we were in Nashville. I would sit in the basement and I faked it. I was like, coming to you live. And I'd make up some city we were in just to make it interesting. Nobody listened. But that's kind of how it started. And then when podcasting became popular, we kind of transitioned. But I had so much content from traveling and speaking every night for years that it was just
Mhm.
a natural to sit in front of a computer and start speaking.
Well, tell us a little bit about your background. I mean, obviously, you had this kind of strong-willed child, but most people don't necessarily start a podcast just because of a child like that. So, what is your background?
My background's in marketing and business. I was an international business major and I spent like 20 years in the corporate world. But when Casey, our son, came along, it just challenged me. And then
Mm.
it was kind of coming face to face with, I've got anger issues. I am just like my career military dad. This is not going to work with this kid. So that set me down that path. And then we started working with kids who are like our son. Heather, I would go in and volunteer at Casey's school because he kept getting kicked out of schools. So I would go into the classroom at lunch and I found I was really good at working with these, kids who are odd and different. Probably like a
Mhm.
lot of the podcast hosts, right? Creative. Today's language would be neurodivergent kids who didn't really fit in the classroom. And so I had this idea. I was like, well, let's just invite them into our home because most of them don't really need therapy and they just sit at the therapist's office and are like, I don't know, I don't know. And so we did these Lego camps where these weird little kids came in to our home, which was different, and they saw Legos on the floor and they started building together. And then we would just teach them how to deal with social skills, frustration, meltdowns. And then we got invited to speak. And so at about that time, I got fired from my last job because I was very good at getting jobs, but not keeping them. And that's why I podcast. I don't want to work for someone else. And that's why you're so fun to work with because you don't put like all these restrictions, right? Like you kind of let me be me
Mhm.
and it works really well. And so I got fired from my last job at America Online. And I remember telling my wife, like, so we've got no way to make money right now. What are we going to do? So I started developing content, and that content became programs, became speaking engagements, and then became podcasts. But the
Mhm.
podcast thing is so fun because you get such immediate feedback from people, like right away.
Interesting.
I don't have to wait and go speak somewhere. I put out a podcast and we get emails instantly from, hey, you touched on this, you didn't mention that. And I love that immediate feedback.
So when I think about podcasting, I guess I'm comparing it to social media. And I always feel like it's a little bit challenging because it isn't like an immediate feedback loop where someone can't message you from a post and say, I think X, Y, and Z, or what about this? But it's really great to hear you say that you are getting a lot of quick feedback because that means you've got a really engaged audience. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think we've cultivated that from the beginning where it wasn't like I always hated like, hey, if you want to find the secret to stopping defiance, get this. And then it was always I gave a lot of content, and then it was email us personally. We're not an organization, we're not a company, we're a family. And so that's always cultivated a lot of feedback. And so if you go on our Instagram page, we have very, 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 like we get to know people. Like people come out here where we live and hike and they're like, hey, can I meet you? And we're like, yeah, we'll go hike, but you got to keep up with me. And so then we'll wear your kids out so they actually behave. I'm kidding. But I think the difference for me is I love Instagram, even though I hated it a year ago, because of that immediate engagement. But the tough part with it, say Instagram or TikTok, is I get 90 seconds to explain. Whereas a podcast, I try to keep mine, I shoot for like 22 minutes so I
Mhm.
can develop, give context. Here are three different ways you could handle it. And then our call to action sometimes is to email us if you're struggling. I'd say obviously Instagram is immediate, but podcast within hours and days, we're getting quite a few emails about each
Mhm.
podcast.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I know that your show really blew up in the last year, and I know you and I've had conversations about it, and I really think that the content and the heart of the content is so powerful. As you have mentioned, think that there is a rise in our society with all kinds of different parenting issues, but a lot of them have to do with this ability to focus. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of that, in my personal opinion, as a parent, is wrapped around screen time and how difficult it is to extract our children from these devices and engage with people and exercise their bodies. How much do you feel like the content of the show has just really helped? Is it just one of those things where it's like, hey, this is for just a time as this, right? We need this content today as parents. Do you feel like that has really helped with the following and the listenership of the show?
Yeah, I think it's always content, right? I'm not good at, all the consultants like do this and you'll get followers, but then you're not being yourself.
Hmm.
And we've done really good content since the beginning, like 25 years ago. I think what helps us personally is I'm a guy, I'm a dad in a space that's usually dominated by women and
Hmm.
female psychologists. So my voice is very unique in this space. We're unique because we deal with strong-willed kids and kids on the spectrum, different kids, so the typical parenting strategies don't really work. So when people find us, like the most common comment ever for 25 years is, um, it feels like you're describing our home.
Mm.
Nobody has ever described this, like down to details. I'll mention, hey, our kids with a busy brain, sometimes they'll collect acorns or stones in their pockets. And immediately on Instagram or email will be, how did you know that? Because parents feel very alone of like, I've got this weird kid. I feel like I'm the only one yelling and struggling. And then they hear a story and they're like, wait, other people go through that? I'm like, yeah, this is my world. Like, you're
Mm.
normal. So I think, Casey, my son, we were talking about this last night with like our Instagram blew up last year. And he said, Dad, imagine that Instagram blew up, but you didn't have all the content. Like it would have been wasted. Like people
Mm.
would have found you and been like, well, that's not very good. So it's always those overnight stories. On Instagram, people are like, where were you back in whatever? And I was like, I was out traveling across the country. I'm only new to Instagram, but look, I've got gray hair. I think it's always the content. That's why you and I listen to some people's podcasts. It's because it's every time I listen, I walk away and I have something new for my health, my exercise routine, whatever it is.
Mhm. I think that it's worth noting and really very interesting that your son Casey is now an adult and he is working with you in the business. When you started this business of yours 25 years ago, did you ever imagine that this strong-willed child would be your business partner?
No, I thought I was going to be in jail for murdering him because I couldn't control. No, it was weird. All those kids that we invited into our home, he was a kid then. Like they would come over sometimes and go to his bedroom. And he's like, Dad, get these weird kids out of my house. He grew up in it. Now, the really interesting thing is, and he traveled with me for a long time. So he and I would speak on stage. He would do school assemblies. I would train teachers. It used to be moms mainly emailing in, and he was like 18 or 22. Well, now he's older than some of the millennial moms that are emailing in. My hope is that he got married last year. If he has kids, I want to do a podcast, which is almost like a boomer dad, millennial dad, almost like the rich dad, poor dad, where we can take questions and I'll answer as like the old school guy and he'll give me his weak I'm kidding. He'll give me his good I'm just kidding. I love the millennials are awesome to me, but anyway, that might be something that we could transition to in the future
Hmm.
because then you get two different perspectives, which I think would be cool.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. How has the show evolved? And correct me if I'm wrong, but you started around 2020, right?
No, I think I'd have to look. Um, I think we were probably 2017 or 18.
Oh, okay.
So it honestly, it's the same. I mean, the only thing that happened is the first 250 or 300 episodes, we didn't have a sponsor. We had listeners,
Sure.
but then COVID hit. And of course,
Hmm.
that's, helped all of us. That tanked our travel business, but then I could sit at home
Right.
and podcast. So the content I think is exactly the same, except I'm better. I know a little bit more than I
Sure.
did. And I've noticed I've gone back and listened to the old ones. I have this tick where I say, right, right, because I'm a little bit of a people pleaser and you want people to connect and be like, right, come on, are you getting this? So I go through a transcript and one I did last week, I said right with a question mark 41 times. I'm like, I am so freaking irritating. Why is anybody listening to me? So I'm really working on that. But anyway, I don't think it's changed much at all. I think
Yeah.
the difference is just Instagram blew up last year. It brought a whole new wave of young people in listening, and then
Hmm.
it just kind of caught on. So
Yeah. Yeah. And that to me, that is so fascinating. So when we started representing your show, it was decent size, but it was relatively small. And then you really just blew up in the last year. And Calm Parenting is now one of the top parenting podcasts that's out there.
attribute that to True Native coming along and saying, "No, you guys are great." Look, that's a really fun part. I'll just say as a podcaster, we did probably 300 shows. We've got like 450 now where we didn't get anything.
Mhm.
But that was fine because we were giving good content and people buying our programs, coming to our events. So no bitterness at all. But it's really gratifying now. Like when you have an advertiser and people do complain sometimes because I'll say like on Instagram, hey, I just did a new podcast. It's free. And then people will be like, it's not free. You have to listen to 4,000 ads. And I'm like, there's four ads. 85% of my podcasts, like no whining. It's free. Don't be so entitled. Like I try not to be defensive, Heather, but with that one, I'm like, you're getting free content.
For sure.
Listen, it's two ads up front, two in the middle. And if you don't stop complaining, I'm going to add a sixth one just to annoy you. And
That's
I
how
try.
discipline works.
Well, I also try in the podcast, and again, no offense to anybody else, but I hate the podcasts that start with, well, how was your weekend, Sarah, or whatever, and then there's like 2 or 3 minutes of fluff. And I'm like, I don't care about your weekend. So
Right.
mine always starts with, do you have a child who does X, Y, or Z? Good. That's what we're going to discuss on today's episode of Calm Parenting Podcast. And then I really try to get to a strategy or insight within the first minute
Hmm.
because there's a little bit of guilt too, because I know at about the 12-minute mark, there's going to be two ads. And I really am conscientious about, like, even with our ads, and I don't know if this is right or not, I try to keep the ads with the same flavor as I talk in the podcast.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I don't go to a different style. A lot of people complain because they're like, I don't know if you're reading an ad or if you're doing your podcast. And then part of that selfishly is I don't want them to know it's an ad because then they'll skip it.
Right.
So,
No, 100%.
yeah, so I don't want to do, okay, there's an ad coming up. I have gotten better, Heather, at transitioning. So Casey has to put those little ad markers in, where the ads go. I never did it before because I talk so fast. And now I'll say, okay, point number 4, I love. And then I'll pause. and then he puts it there so there's an ad, but then I'm teasing point number four. So
Right.
I'm almost getting professional at
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's really, that's the way that ads should be done. And the value of a host read ad is just for that very purpose. It's, I like you, I like the content that you're providing. And if you can give me an ad read that sounds very similar to the content, I'm going to listen to the ad read. And I feel like that's something that we need to talk about more in the podcast space is that people have to actually listen to the ads in order to purchase the products. And so often ads are recorded in like a different tenor, or it sounds so much like we're going to an ad break. And my biggest pet peeve is, okay, now we're going to go to our ad break. You might as well just say, get your phone out and fast forward for the next 2 minutes, right?
Right.
And it's not really helping anyone. The other thing that I think is so important, which I know is important to you as well, is that when you're partnering with products that you really love, they're easy to talk about, and your audience is going to need to purchase these products anyways. They might as well purchase products that you have vetted, that you know you like, and that is really ultimately benefiting the show.
We were talking before we started. One of the harder parts for me is like, this is a Cozy Earth shirt. I actually brought Cozy Earth in. I reached out and said, I love your stuff. Our kids are picky with their clothes. You need to advertise on our podcast. And then they tried. And like for me, I'm not saying other people should do this, but like I love this so much. I'll do occasional Instagram video and mention it. And some of them now, Heather, I don't probably won't even forward to you, but I'll be like, I'll just be at the end of a video and say, this is my new Cozy Earth because I do love the brand. Like AG1, I've drank that before they were a sponsor to the show. So I think where I come down on that is I used to listen to, remember talk radio was really big. And I remember hearing people go to a thing and they would be like reading off. And this month you can get 30% off your next purchase. And I was like, you're just reading a script. Like it's disrespectful
Mhm.
both to your audience and to the advertiser to do that. So I do try to keep mine in the same energy, the same tone. Now, some of them, if you have a better help or something else where it's a little bit more serious, I can't go with like high energy. Hey, are your kids struggling with bulimia? Good, right? I can't do
Right.
that, but it still keeps within the tenor of it. So yeah, I'm
Mhm.
with you 100% on that. I try to keep that. The podcast is 22 minutes and I fit in a lot because I talk
Mhm.
kind of fast
Mhm.
and I go right for it. And I want the ad read to be like that because if the ad read is too long, you just lose people. And
100%.
people are used to like boom, boom, boom. And I'm like, hey, here's this product. Here's why I love it. Boom, boom, boom. Here's the promo code. And I just think that's smart and effective
Mhm.
rather than just being like, well, I have to artificially make it X long. Like, maybe I shouldn't mention that on this, but and then sometimes the hard part is I used to be in marketing. So I think my ad copy is better. But something that you guys are great at is this. I've emailed some of the account people and I've said, hey, for this product, I went on the website and they mentioned these benefits. Can I use these in my talking points? Because they're not in my current talking points, but I think they'd resonate. Your reps go back to the brand and the brand comes back and says, by all means, use that.
Mhm.
So I think that's another thing that we as hosts can do is really look into that and say, I know my audience better than the brand does because,
Absolutely.
and so, hey, could I do this? And the worst thing that they can say is, no, we're not allowed to, or that's not our focus.
Yeah. And just to touch on ad length, if your ad is too long, people are definitely going to fast forward through it. You need to get to the point. And I think that obviously that's your personality, that's the style of your show. As you said, there isn't a lot of fluff. It's like, hey, here's the content, here's what you need to know, let's get to it. And making sure that the ad read is following along that same path is important just from a contextual perspective because
Mhm.
that's the type of content you create. But that's also just good. Like you said, from a marketing perspective, being able to be direct with your messaging is going to get people to say, oh, wow, yeah, I should go buy that Cozy Earth product because I really love it. You're using a lot of really good techniques. I'm curious, like, when was the turning point for you where you decided to start taking on advertisers?
when I had a big enough audience.
That's a great
Right?
answer.
I mean,
And how
that's
did you know your audience was big enough? Was there like a certain point where you're like, hey, I think there are enough people here that I should start selling ads?
yeah, and I mean it became evident when our downloads started really picking up and like,
Hmm.
we had researched like, okay, we need to get to a certain level. And then it's always cool when you don't plan on it. We didn't have like a master plan. If I'm going to do some really provocative Instagram ads, now that's going to drive people. We didn't know. The Instagram ad that launched or video that launched everything, I'm actually going to release it tonight, I think. Again, it is a horrible representation of what I teach. It was on screens and it blew up. Like it got
Huh.
so much hatred and so many likes. Heather, this time last year, we were at 13,000 Instagram followers. I told Casey, I'll never do Instagram. Instagram's stupid. Like I'm an old guy. Like I don't want to do stupid social media. So I was doing these, we were in Arizona, in Sedona, and I was doing these videos. We were at Cathedral Rock, and I was like, okay, there's people coming. I've got 40 seconds. And I do this video, I post it, and we went from 13 to 30 to 60 to 100. And now we're at 900,000. In our home, it's a joke. Like I'm a 59-year-old influencer, right? Like and so we get these emails from people of like, hey, it's generic. We want you to represent our fashion brand. And I was like, have you ever looked at our videos? I wear a hoodie and a baseball cap every day. So
Yeah,
anyway, I think I like that it happened in a way by accident, that
sure.
it wasn't planned or manipulated, but it was by accident, but the content was already there. And then I don't
Right.
know how, like, if you guys I don't remember how it worked, but I think you probably sent a
Yeah, I think we
lovely
maybe
email.
did reach out to you. Hmm.
Yeah. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, someone wants to pay me for talking into a microphone. I'm all over that. And then
Yeah.
there's the thing of like, how particular are you about advertisers? And at the time I was like, I'll advertise the devil. I don't care. I just want some right like I wouldn't. But now I'm more, this is true though. In the beginning, I would take anyone because it was
Mhm.
just so novel. It was like a thing
Sure.
of someone wants to give me money. And then you find out like this ad is really hard to write. Like I don't really love this. And so now over time, I can say, yeah, I'd love to be able to do that, but I just can't. It just doesn't fit us. And
Mhm.
then there are other ones where we have gone out and you've gone out for things that I really believe in, and we can bring those people in because I really believe in them.
So what makes a good advertising partnership if a company was listening right now and they had never entered into the podcast ad space, what would your recommendations be for them to really create that strong partnership between the brand and the podcaster?
Oh, for the brand, I think, well, one, thank you, brands, for coming, but have the personal connection part and being very
Mm.
clear about what your objectives are. Um, I think on our end, it's more on our end is just being flexible, right? Like
Hmm.
if the brand wants to do this, I'm flexible. I like different ideas too, because now with social media, like there's so many options. If we did something on screens, we could bring in something like Bright Canary, right? They haven't advertised on our podcast, but like they're this really cool app. Well, if they came in, I'd say, hey, why don't we create a podcast around that topic with screens, and you could be an official sponsor of that. So I think flexibility, the communication part, and really good talking points
Hmm.
is super helpful. Keep it short and sweet. Don't waste words because all like when I'm writing ads, and I'm doing that this week because we're coming up on the next month, you want every word to count. And there are a lot of like brand language that isn't necessary and it's like not even good. So I don't want to lose advertisers, but at times I'll just eliminate some of that. It's unhelpful. And so, but I've been very fortunate with True Native to talk with your account people and say, hey, here's some copy. Can you run it by the brand? Because I think for our audience, it'll resonate a lot more than
Hmm.
what the brand is recommending. And almost every time they come back and say, yeah, sure, use that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, how do you find that balance between creating good content and servicing your advertiser? I know you've talked a lot about kind of the way you structure ads. Is that the key for you, or is there any other secrets that you could share?
For me, if I can relate it to the content of the podcast
Hmm.
and I use the same style, hey, do you have kids who are like that? If you've got kids who are picky, or do you start? Because a lot of times I start with a question
Yeah.
because that elicits a yes or a no, but I
Hmm.
do the ones that elicit the yes. And then it makes it easier. Sometimes the brands don't do that, but I like to upfront put cozyearth.com/calm, get 40% off because that's a hook to me. Like we've got one
Hmm.
coming up where they're doing a buy one, get one free.
Hmm.
Well, I don't want that at the end because just at the end, I want, if they hear me segueing, because they know it's going to be a commercial, even though I try to keep it same tone, they may tune out in the first paragraph. The one I'm writing right now, like within the second or third sentence is, oh, by the way, you can get buy one, get one free this weekend with this offer. So I think I try to put myself in the shoes of the moms or dads, and for us, mainly moms who are listening. They're busy. The
Hmm.
moms get pitched everything all day long. So how can I connect with, say, you know what, Heather, I'm realizing it's the same thing I do with a podcast. What's your pain point with your kids?
Right.
Right? They're tattling on each other, sibling fights. Well, that's a pain point. I want to listen to that podcast. Well, what's your pain point that this product is going to help with? And I lead with that and then try not to do all the fluff. The other part is tying in my own personal experience. And the harder part sometimes is not hard, but I put a lot of time into it. I want the talking points to reflect my personality and how I use it so it doesn't sound generic
Right.
for like everybody else.
I think all of those pieces that you have outlined there, a lot of it just has to do with creating good content that people are going to consume. And if you approach the ad just like you're approaching the content, then you've got a greater chance again that people are going to listen to it, which is really powerful.
I think even like humor sometimes I'll
Yeah.
use. And I'll be like, you have no idea how many days in a row I have worn this Cozy Earth shirt because it's so comfortable. But that's the flavor of the podcast. And it also relates to a lot of the kids that we work with. They wear the same hoodie sweatshirt for like 18 straight days. So I can use that. And then on one of these I'm writing, I'm like, I am just like your kids. Like I find something that's comfortable and I'm not taking it off.
Hmm.
And then they can immediately relate to that, and then it's like, oh, well, maybe I'll buy this for my kids because the Cozy Earth stuff is fantastic.
Every time I've talked to you, you've talked so much about Cozy Earth. I'm gonna have to go buy a Cozy Earth.
Use code CALM
Okay, I
so
will. I
you get credit
promise.
for it. 40% off, Heather. It is so.
I really need to
And
do that.
AG1. Start your day with AG1. Keeps you
That's right.
regular, energized, all of those
Yeah,
things.
yep, yep. It's true. So now you have done a phenomenal job growing your audience. I know we've touched on that, but I just want to circle back because audience growth is really very difficult. It's not easy to grow an audience. Would you attribute the growth? I know you've said obviously it's that you have a lot of content that was out there, but is it primarily Instagram? Which I have to say, I want to go on the record as noting that I have often said the way to grow a podcast is not using social media because it doesn't work for a lot of people. But it seems like that was really a tipping point for you.
I know that when Instagram went from like 13,000 to 300 to 500, I mean, that was driving so many new people and a
Hmm.
new demographic. That was bringing in younger people. And then
Mm.
now I'm on lovely TikTok. And now my TikTok is starting to pick up, but they're so young and it's I hate the platform. I have to fight it. Instagram's easy to me now. So here's how I use Instagram. I have videos and I do them all outside while I'm hiking. So they're always like mountains in the background, snow, something pretty, because I don't have a lot of natural charisma. So I figured, well, mountains are kind of cool to look at. And now it's become kind of part of the brand. But I'll do videos that are kind of generic parenting. But
Hmm.
then for each podcast, I do these little, you can't see it, but it's really messy. I'll do 4 videos for each podcast.
Oh,
So
perfect.
so I have all these sheets that my son stole from the Cloudvale Hotel where he works sometimes in Jackson because they're perfect size. So when I'm hiking, so I take the content of each podcast and I come up with four different narratives or four different
Right.
points. Then I'll go out and I do it on that one and I'll say, because you only get 90 seconds, and I'll say, hey, here's key point number one. If you want more, go to the Calm Parenting Podcast
Hmm.
because episode 453 is on defiant kids who talk back.
Hmm.
Well, so I'm giving content, but then I'm always driving more if you want more. Or sometimes I'll tease, like we also handle, what do you do when when you're talking on the phone, moms, and your kids interrupt you? I cover that in the latest episode of the Calm Parenting Podcast. So I don't know how many people go and listen, but the frequency of the comments among social media is, oh, I just started listening to your podcast. It's really helpful.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I think personally, I think that helps. What we don't do well yet is I do a pretty good job of going on other people's podcasts, but it's hard to get on people's podcasts who have a really big reach. Although now it's easier because we have a big reach. You know how that works. What I haven't done yet is start interviewing other people on mine,
Hmm.
um, which would give me access to other people's audiences.
Hmm.
But I just don't feel like doing it yet.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think that you definitely should give that some consideration because the format of your show, as you've mentioned throughout this whole episode, is very specific. And while I'm a huge lover of interview podcasts, I do think that it could change the content enough that it might be a positive or it might be a negative. It's kind of hard to say. It almost seems like you'd need to test it out to see how your audience would react.
I think it would be like once a month, so
Mm-hmm.
like one out of eight or one out of 10 podcasts would be that. But I think, yeah, I wouldn't want to transition totally to that
Mm-hmm.
because then I lose like the quickness of it. I would be a decent interviewer, but I think I'd be annoying too. Because I'm so used to talking about my thing. I'm
Right.
afraid I would talk over someone like I have. Like I feel like this morning I've talked way too much with you.
No,
So,
no, not at all. I do think that one thing that I have seen happen over and over with podcasts is that often hosts think, oh, I've got this really big name guest coming on, and that is just going to spike my numbers. Everybody's going to listen to that episode because the guest is so big. And rarely does it actually translate into more
interesting.
listeners. And then I've also heard again and again that people like the host of the show and they want to know more about the host. And when you have a lot of guests on, you focus so much on that guest and their story that you're not getting enough of the host story. I don't know
No,
that
that's
interviewing would be the best path for you. And it's hard to say, but I do think that guesting on other shows is certainly a very good, proven way to grow audience. And I love that you're drawing this direct connection from Instagram to your podcast. And I think that that is very strategic. And that's the piece that we miss sometimes. There's so many companies out there that create like the audiograms or whatever, where it's like, hey, I'm just going to take a little piece of your podcast and throw it on a social platform. And my take on that is that I am on Instagram because I want to consume Instagram type content. And if you're
right.
trying to force podcast content on me, it doesn't feel right. Like I'm not there to listen. Not, also, I have to say 9 out of 10 times or 9.99 out of 10 times, I don't have the volume on Instagram on. I might have the subtitles, I might be reading things, but I'm not listening as much. But I think that you're doing such a strategic move where you're saying, hey, here's a bit of content. Now go back and listen to the episode for more of this. So you're essentially driving traffic to the podcast instead of giving so much information on Instagram where people can just stay there.
The hard part is, Heather, we do give so much information that there are people on Instagram who have said, you have changed our family just from your reels. Like
Wow.
if you watch, there is enough. And we've always, like back when we had a big newsletter thing, it was always that thing we debated internally. And I was like, I don't want to be that guy that does that. But if you want to know the extra, so we gave the content. so that people walked away with something to do, but there was always a little bit more. So
Mhm.
I would rather err on giving out a lot of really good content and trusting that people over time will say, okay, I need to go listen to more. And sometimes on Instagram, I'll just say, look, this is a 90-second video. You can't solve complex problems that you've had for 14 years with your teenager in a 90-second video. Because people are like, well, you didn't touch on that. I was like, it's a 90-second video. It's free. Come on. You have to do some investment too. I've started saying on the little promo ones, it's a 22-minute podcast, so they know it's not a 3 hour Joe Rogan. 22 minutes because moms have told us I listen on the way to pick my child up from school. I listen um, while at night when I'm just after the kids are in bed and I'm almost asleep. I listen when I'm on my commute to work so that I don't know what the appropriate length is, but I know that 22 to 28 seems to do really well. And then occasionally we'll have longer ones
Mhm.
and people listen. But for me, I'd rather have them get something, boom, 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 get something, and then want the next one.
Is there anything you wish you knew before you started the show that you think would have been helpful?
Honestly, no.
Hmm.
I'm glad that I didn't know
Hmm.
because you know this, because you're a go-getter, but how many people, I know a guy who told me 2 years ago he was going to start a podcast. I'm like, when's your first steps? Well, I'm trying to get the right equipment. And I was like, at the beginning, you know those the old Apple AirPods with a cord that plugged into your thing. Until last March, that's all I use. Like it was pretty crappy and tinny, but we had a decent audience because the content was good. And then
Yeah.
Casey made me buy like a Shure 7 something. So we have like a real, but like I know this isn't ideal, but I tell people all the time, I'm like, stop overthinking it. Like I do podcasts and people have producers and like a soundproof studio. And I was like, nobody listens to your podcast. Like, why are you like, I'm not being mean, but like we have a small home. I'm in our extra bedroom. It is my little space. I've got this little cheap desk and I'll put my little microphone here, my headphones, and then I just roll
Yeah.
and I do the podcast and I don't edit it all. I don't have bumper music. There's nothing like boom, 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 welcome to the call. It's just my voice comes on
Yeah.
because that's how I like it. And
Hmm.
so when I encourage people, I'm like, don't listen to other podcasts to get ideas for it.
Hmm.
Do it the way you want to do it. I mean, I think that's what Rogan did. Who would ever thought that just a dude smoking a cigar talking to people for 3 hours about miscellaneous stuff? But if he became like corporate, then nobody would listen to him. Either I'm older now. I'm glad I didn't know. I'm glad I didn't have like an Instagram strategy because it would have never worked. It was
Yeah.
just a dumb video. I'm going to release it tonight and see what people think. I'll probably have like 100,000 people quit because they're like, that doesn't sound like you. That's my
That's so
fear.
funny.
That's my fear is people are going to be like, what happened to you? You were so reasonable and you sound so harsh in that. So
That's so awesome. I'm going to have to look now and watch it because I'm really interested to hear that video. And I'm sure your advice is great as well. So I need to check that out, I'm sure.
I'm trying to figure out what my title is, which is like, I hate this video, but I think it's true, where it's good or something. And then
Yeah.
I don't know, or just release it and be like, anyway, we'll see you know
Yeah.
what'll happen? Nobody will respond to it. My best Instagram posts where I give like really good advice, like deep stuff that nobody else mentions, I get like 45 likes and one comment. I'm like, that was best. And then I put out something easy and dumb, like, hey, after school, don't ask your kids how their day was because they hate school. And then that one will be like 14,000 likes. And I'm like, that's basic, like that. Or my favorite was like, stop being an a-hole to your kids. Well, that one gets a lot of, anyway, it's just funny.
That is so funny. Well, Kirk, thank you so much for being on the show. If people want to check the podcast out or find your programs, your Instagram account, where's a good place for them to find you?
CelebrateCalm.com is our website, Calm Parenting Podcast. You can find it anywhere. And if you are an advertiser, contact True Native. When we get the inquiries like from brands, I always forward it to you guys and say, you guys handle everything seamlessly because you do. Because I don't know like all the ad stuff that you do. But whenever I send people to you, I know they're in good hands, and it's just such a nice thing. So I appreciate our partnership a lot.
Well, thank you, Kirk. I appreciate our partnership too. And I appreciate you coming on the show because it's so fun to be able to talk to a host. And I really enjoy your perspective on how to create good partnerships and great ad reads. So thank you.
You're welcome. Remember, cozyearth.com/calm, Heather. It's 40% off.
Okay, I won't forget. Thank you for listening. I hope that you have enjoyed this episode as much as I have. Kirk certainly shared some great advice with us on how to create great ad reads and really looking at the content of your show and making sure that the ad read matches that content. So if you haven't checked out his podcast, please go and check it out. And if you haven't checked out our YouTube channel, please head on over to YouTube and search up Heather Osgood for a full list of all of our great episodes. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you again next time. Thank you for listening to the Podcast to Advertising Playbook, your source to a better understanding of the podcast to advertising industry.